Lloyd is a friend of a friend. We had a similar group of friends. She was, for all intents and purposes, Carly Lloyd was the best player on the women's national team, probably between the years 2012 and 2016, somewhere around there. And she was somebody who I went to Rutgers with. We had mutual friends, and she was just an incredible athlete, but very outspoken, really knew her stuff. And when the U.S. women's team tied Puerto Rico, and somebody in the chat, please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure that that's who they played. If you want to look that up real quick and just confirm for me that it was Puerto Rico that they played. They ended up tying, but after the game, they were a little too celebratory in their efforts. And Carly called this out, saying, you guys came within an eyelash of losing in the round of 32. And you're out here acting like, oh, it's not a big deal. You know, we're going to celebrate. We're technically not out of the tournament. And all the while, she's basically warning them that this attitude is going to allow you to slip up sooner rather than later, and you're going to get knocked out. Well, who could have guessed that they would get knocked out in the very next game? And was I right about it being Puerto Rico?
I don't see that in particular.
Anyway, somebody, for the life of me, answer in the chat.
You were the one who really wanted to talk about this. Yeah, you should know. Then you should know.
Anyway, they ended up losing to Sweden yesterday in the penalty shootout round. Now, why was this so significant? Because I watched the whole thing. The United States women's team was up by 2 penalty shots with 3 shots to go for Sweden and 2 shots to go for the United States. You know what ended up happening? Sweden made all 3 of their kicks, and the U.S. missed all the other 2 of theirs. The odds of something like that happening are so staggeringly impossible that you actually had to see it to believe it. And, of course, it was highlighted by none other than Megan Rapinoe's air-mailed kick. This is somebody who at one time or another you could argue was the best player on the women's soccer team post Carly Lloyd. And I would agree with that. She certainly had that level of gravitas, not just because she became a national figure for the LGBTQ community, as well as a lightning rod against former President Donald Trump.
Well, he's apparently cheering that they were defeated.
Yes, they are. But what we are going to do now is play you guys a video so that you can get an idea of how we even got to this point. Colin, if you would please.
A heartbreaking and agonizing loss by the U.S. women's soccer team has become culture war fodder for the ex-president. On Sunday, the dreams of a 3rd consecutive World Cup championship were shattered when the women's team lost to Sweden in penalty kicks, the deciding shot crossing the goal line by just a millimeter. How did Donald Trump react to the team's World Cup exit? He celebrated their loss. On Truth Social, Trump blamed their loss on wokeness and took a shot at team captain Megan Rapinoe for missing her penalty, saying, "Nice shot, Megan."
Former President Donald Trump reacted to the loss on Truth Social, writing, "The shocking and totally unexpected loss by the U.S. women's soccer team to Sweden is fully emblematic of what is happening to our once great nation under crooked Joe Biden. Many of our players were openly hostile to America. No other country behaved in such a manner, or even close. Woke equals failure. Nice shot, Megan."
Rapinoe and the team have been targets of right-wing media for years for taking the knee to protest for racial justice and saying that they would not visit the White House if they won the World Cup in 2019.
I couldn't care less about the loss. Couldn't care less. I hope that they took a lesson from losing that we all want our kids to learn when things go down, which is be introspective, figure out how it happened. And in this case, they didn't have their eye on the ball. They had their eye on their woke activism. I feel like there's a future now for this team potentially without this woman at the helm. But how do you see it as a guy who is immersed in sports for a living?
Offered for the U.S. women when they won their title in France in 2019 to come to the White House and be celebrated, as is commonplace with champion sports teams. And the U.S. women turned their back on that offer. And from that point forward, they allowed, I think, the woke instincts of Megan Rapinoe to direct every decision they made. They became polarizing. They became, frankly, quite unlikable. And ultimately, that led to, and I think this is important, the single worst performance by the U.S. Women's World Cup team ever.
Oh.
So there you go. You get an idea of exactly where people stand regarding what happened the other day. Now, why is this significant? Well, a lot of this stems from the fact that Megan Rapinoe has been an extremely outspoken social justice warrior advocate for the past several years. Some of it warranted, other times not so much. Why do I say not so much? Because I happen to also have a friend of a friend, somebody that I worked with for a number of years, that is very good friends with the former standout goalie of the U.S. women's soccer national team, Hope Solo, who many people know. Now, Hope Solo was very candid in her opinion the other day when she was asked about Megan Rapinoe. And she said that Megan was essentially a bully in the locker room as a leader of the group, and took exception to people standing for the national anthem because she was taking a knee and not everybody was going along with what she was doing. Now, is Hope Solo some, right-wing, Looney Tune that just has this opinion now, even though she's not on the national team anymore? No. In fact, Hope Solo was a huge supporter of Bernie Sanders. So I am not looking at this through the lens of, well, this is definitely a political angle. I see it more so from, in the world of competitive athletes, let's be honest, when you get to this level, it's as competitive as it gets. And the window is short. It doesn't last very long. And so as a result, yeah, you might be right about that, Ray. So what one would actually know. I look at it two ways. This was a choke job that is unforgivable because this was it wasn't like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. I remember just thinking, all right, well, they've got this. This is over. And the idea that every single thing, Carla, I am not disagreeing here about what the history of Hope Solo is about. I am with you that if anybody is able to speak to this, it's somebody who, frankly, doesn't have anything to lose at this point. I don't know if it's one person to another just picking a fight with an ex-teammate because they don't like them. But there is something to be said when it comes to these types of competitive athletes that when the spotlight is on them and they have an opportunity to make a statement and they want to continue to make that statement and they want to continue to exact that influence. The point is about Megan Rapinoe is that if you seek the spotlight and you seek it often, be prepared for the consequences if things fall apart. Her kick was absolutely terrible. And yes, people fail in athletics. But this was an all-time failure for the women's soccer team. And it comes on the heels of a tie that their former best player turned sports commentator, Carly Lloyd, made very clear to them that you're going to lose if you don't change your attitude right now because you're not as good as you think you are. And having this attitude of, well, we tied and we'll be okay. No, that's not it. And so the fact that they were in that particular situation and they had it won and they let it go in such dramatic fashion. Yes, they're going to get piled on. There's no question that was going to happen. But what's the greater lesson here? What is the story here? Metalopoly, that has been, again, the relevancy of the fact that the women's soccer team was beaten by a high school boys team. That's not what we're talking about here. You know where we stand on that issue. So
where do we stand on what issue? Which issue?
About the competing of men against, that there's no difference when men compete, that women and men are the same and that they compete against each other in sports, which is lunacy. That's not true. You can't, it's physically, there's a total
I don't recall ever discussing this, but that's okay.
No, I'm saying that when the idea that there isn't a physiological difference in sports competition between men and women. The women's national team competed against a boys' high school team, and they got destroyed. They got beat like 18-0. It was an absolute slaughter. So proving once again.
I'm not sure what the point of that is, though. Men are better than women at sports?
No, that there's a physical difference between men and women. That doesn't mean that women, don't have the same ability to compete against one another for sport excellence. That's not to be disputed here. It was like making fun of the fact that they got beat by a men's team. Well, okay, but they're faster and stronger than they are. It is what it is. But
I bet you they'd beat whatever team you're on.
Yeah, probably. That's
beat you and your team.
That's all the story. The shameful part of this is that when you see the reaction from the Trump side, the conservative side, it had been one thing if their ire was specifically directed at Rapinoe, just saying that, your rhetoric and all of this is bad. No, they were cheering the fact that the women's team lost. You're cheering the fact that the women's national team lost? That's about as anti-American as it gets. You can root against Megan Rapinoe and say that she's anti-American if you feel that way, but they are still wearing the red, white, and blue. They are still representing the United States of America. You don't have to like it, but they are representing our nation. To suggest that it's a great thing that the women's soccer team lost? The men's soccer team can't compete for diddly squat in this country at all. The women's national team, particularly when they won the World Cup back in 1999, that changed soccer in this country for young girls forever. Brandi Chastain, Julie Foudy, Mia Hamm. You had, plenty of players that followed afterwards. You have Alex Morgan. You had Carly Lloyd. You had Megan Rapinoe. There are a lot of phenomenal athletes that have been competing on this team for many years. And yes, Rapinoe is at the end of her career. Now, what I will say, and again, Metalopoly, I agree on that sentiment.
Travers, you know what they all do that's in common? The ballerinas and the athletes, do you want to know what they have in common? Pilates. Just saying. They all do Pilates.
Yoga and Pilates are great for you.
Look, a lot of the football players here, a lot of the Dolphin players, a lot of them do Pilates. It is something that they do, and dancers, lots of dancers do Pilates. So
this is going to be a very, very humbling moment for Megan Rapinoe, and why I use her as an example, not because she's a political lightning rod, even though I believe that she is one. The fact of the matter is, she is going to be remembered. The lasting image of Megan Rapinoe is going to be her airmailing that kick. She was the leader of this team. This was a kick that she did not really have much pressure to make, let's be honest. This wasn't the last kick. Her kick followed another goal by Sweden, another miss by the women's team, and another goal by Sweden, and that's what ended the game. But her kick came at a time where there was little pressure on her to make that kick, and she didn't just miss it, she missed it horrifically. Like, that's just unbelievable how bad she missed it. And there are those who are saying, oh, she was laughing after she missed the kick. No, she was laughing at herself that she missed it so badly. She wasn't laughing like it wasn't a big deal. So don't even think about putting that narrative out there, especially for anybody who's never competed athletically. What I will say, though, is that whatever intention she had or has to be, let's say, a big media personality after the fact, this is going to hurt her stock a lot. It's going to hurt her brand a lot. They're going to remember. That's the image that they're going to remember when they think about her going forward.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.